Okay, ladies and gents, week number 2. Right. What we're going to do today is going to be a little bit of a long lesson, but it's not, I won't say it's too difficult. It's just repeat from last year, and that's ratios. I won't say it's easy, but it's not too difficult. Okay? And there's quite a lot of kind of questions that we have to do. Well, I can also tell you that in the grand scheme of things, when you go into your exams, it's going to be a tiny, tiny part. It's a tiny part of maths. Okay? Right, so we've got two numbers. What is a ratio? Ratio, you've heard probably a ratio of 2 to 1, 3 to 1. So I can say, let's say, there's a ratio of 2 to 1. So for, let's say, I don't know, me and another, my partner. Okay, all right, me and my partner. Okay, there's a ratio of 2 to 1. So for every 1 rand that I get, you will get 2 rand. It's a certain ratio. Okay, so what we want to do with ratio is, first of all, simplify. So we've got two numbers, 18 to 12. That could be that for every 12 rand that I get, you get 18 rand. What is the ratio? We want to simplify it. So what we want to do is basically make these numbers smaller, but keep the ratio. So what we got to do, let's use another color, find out which number can I divide both of these with and still get integers. In other words, what we're looking for is the highest common factor. We just learned about that last lesson. Okay, so what's the highest common factor? A common factor for both of these numbers, there is the highest. So they both get divided by 6, isn't it? I can divide both 1 by 6. Okay, and what we'll get is 3 to 2. So that's the ratio. Okay, 18 to 12 is the same as 3 to 2, and that's obviously the answer. Okay? Now, sometimes you might want to work in reverse. So let's say there's a ratio of 3 to 5. So it could be, we use another example. 3 oranges will cost you 5 rand. 3 oranges will cost you 5 rand. Okay? Now you want to say, okay, but I didn't buy 3 oranges, I bought 30 oranges. So how many rands I have to pay? So in other words, I'm working in reverse. Here we simplify the ratio, here we're working upward, but it's the same idea. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to write down, okay, I'm going to write 30, and here is what I try to do. So I need to ask myself, how did I get from 3 to 30? Well, the answer is very simple. I just timed it by 10, isn't it? Okay, so I timed it by 10. I got 30. Therefore, I must time that also by 10, and I will get 50. So the answer is 50. Okay? Now, a similar question, but with a little trick, a little problem. So I've got another ratio that for, let's say, 8 centimeters to 1 meter. Okay, I can't think of an example why I've got this ratio, but let's say, okay? So, or maybe it could be that for each 1 meter length of a rod, I'm going to have 8 centimeters of rust. Okay? Now the question is, right, now I have 250, let's say, yeah, let's work it like that. Let's say I have 250 centimeter. Oh, I want to say basically what's the ratio. Okay, we don't even need to worry about in terms of number. What, you know, what is the, yeah, let's say centimeter, yeah. Okay, so I have 250 centimeters length here. What will be the length there? So now here I have to be a little bit careful. Okay, I have to be a little bit careful. I can't just multiply. You might think, okay, I've got 1 here, therefore I have to write 250. And because we went from 1 to 250, we timed it by 250, then I must multiply the 8 by 250. But then if we do that, we'll make a mistake. Because this is in meters and this is in centimeters. So what I've got to do is, first of all, make sure that both units are the same. So I'm going to keep it as 8 centimeters. But now instead of 1 meter, I'm going to write it in centimeters, which is 1,000 centimeters. Okay? And now when I have the same units, only when I have the same units, in fact, I can just get rid of them because it's the same units. Okay? But now I don't want 1,000, I want 250. Okay? So how do I get from 1,000 to 250? And the answer again is pretty easy. You just divide by 4. So also here I need to divide the 8 by 4, and the answer will be 2. So the answer really is 2. Okay, if we work with centimeters, it will be 2 centimeters. If we work with meters, it will be 2 meters. I want to give you another little question here, which could be a little bit more tricky. Let's say I have, let's say a ratio of 2 to 5. Okay, and now I want to find out, okay, but I want this number to be 3. Okay, right? And then I want to know what this number is. This is a little bit of a tricky one. How do I get from 5 to 3? That's like, how do I know? Here the answers were always quite immediate, right? From 1,250 I divide by 4, but how do I go from 5 to 3? So here I want to just show you something. If you take 5 and you time it by 3 over 5, so you time it by this fraction, the 5 and the 5 cancel out and we end up with a 3. So this is the answer really. If I want to go from 5 to 3, what I need to do is multiply it by 3 over 5. Again, the 5 at the bottom, the denominator will cancel out that 5, and then the 3 in the numerator will end up as the only number. Okay, so that's a very important trick to learn. Okay, how do you go from 5 to 3? You time it by 3 over 5, and now obviously you can do it with any other number. Okay, so in this case, again, I will have to multiply by 3 over 5. Okay, you can see that whatever I do on the one side, I must do on the other side. Okay, and 3 over 5 times 2 is going to be 6 over 5. So in this case, the answer will be 6 over 5. Okay, right. Next, okay. So we've got this kind of class of questions. You might say, right, me and my business partner, we have a ratio, we divide our money 5 to 4. For every 5 rand that I get, I'll get this time a bit more. For every 5 rand that I get, he gets 4 rand. And now the question is, well, but we made 720 rand, so how much each one of us should get? So you might remember it from last lesson, last year. What you're going to do is, first of all, add these two numbers. So 5 plus 4 is 9. So what this thing tells you is that whatever I get, I will divide into 9 parts. I will get 5 of these 9 parts, and you will get 4 of these 9 parts. Okay, so the first thing you have to do is figure out how many parts are we going to divide this whole pie. And we just add them together. 9. Now we're going to divide 720 divided by 9. That should be equal to 80, I think. Yeah, 80. So that means that this 720, imagine that we have this whole 720 rand, that's a whole pie. We're going to divide it into 9 parts. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So 9 parts. Now, this thing tells you, when you divide the 720 into 9 parts, it tells you that each piece of the pie is going to be 80 rand. Okay? And then the last thing you need to say, okay, how many slices of the pie I got? Well, I got 5 pieces of the pie. So I got 580, which is equal to 400. And my friend, my partner, got 4 pieces of the pie. So he's going to get 4 times 80, which is 320. 320? Yeah, 320. And that's the distribution of the money. I will get 400 rand, and he will get 320. Easy, isn't it? Okay? So what do we do here? We first of all add these two numbers to figure out how many pieces of the pie it has. Then we divide the total amount, 720, by the number of pieces of pie to determine how much money or how much whatever each piece of pie is worth. And then we multiply that number by the number of pieces of each of the partners. All right, I'll pause here and we'll put in a couple more questions. Okay, guys, we're back, and I just want to introduce you Nina. Okay, she's a dog that lives around here. She likes me and she follows me around, and she's being very naughty. But anyway, say hello to grade 9. Hello. Hello. Okay, Nina. All right. So now I want to solve 2 more problems from the exercise that I'm going to give you, and these are like word problems. And these word sums are a little bit difficult because you don't just do the math, you also have to understand what they're actually asking. So you need to have your book in front of you. Okay, I didn't write down the whole question. So we're in page 18. Okay, we're doing exercise 4, and I'm going to do first of all J. Okay. So J, I've got told that the length of square A is twice the length of square B, what is the ratio between the area of square A and square B? So that's a little bit more difficult. Length of A to length of B is 2 to 1. What will be the ratio, right? Is that what they're asking me? The ratio between the areas. Now we have to remember that a square, okay, if this is L, the length is L, the area is going to be L squared, right? That's the area of a square. So if the length of this is twice as that, if I'm squaring this, I'm squaring that, I must also square that. So the ratio between the areas will be 4 to 1. Okay? All right, I'm going to show that to you in another way, which maybe is a bit longer, but it will help us to do this. Let's say that the length of B is x. Well, if then I multiplied 1 by x, then I must also multiply 2 by x. Okay? So the length of B, or length of A, is going to be 2x. Right? If the length of B is x, the length of A is going to be 2x. But now let's look at the area. The area of A is going to be 2x squared, which is 4x squared. Hoping you remember that from last year. Okay? 2x squared, we're going to square the 2, we're going to square the x, 4x squared. The length of B is going to be simply x squared, the square of the length. So this ratio, 4x squared, the ratio of the areas is going to be 4x squared to x squared. Okay, but now we want to simplify it. We can see we've got x squared in both of them. We can divide both by x squared. You're going to get 1 and 4. Okay, so it's the same, obviously same answer, but doing a little bit of algebra. And algebra is very important for us. In fact, more important than this whole ratio, but it's also going to help us with the next question. Okay, so the next question, Q. Okay, we're doing Q. I'll read that. The ratio of the length to the breadth of an A4 sheet is square root 2 to 1. So I've got some A4 sheets, okay? And if this is 1, this will be square root 2. The ratio. It doesn't mean that this is actually 1, this is square root 2. It's that the ratio then is square root 2 to 1. Okay? We're told that the area is 1 over 16 meters squared. And now we're asked to calculate the length of each one of them. Now there's probably ways of doing it without algebra, but I think they will be more tricky. And as I said, algebra is in fact more important than our ratios. Okay? So that's how I'm going to do it. I'm going to say, let's say that the length or the breadth, just like we did here, let's say that the breadth is actually x, because I don't know what it is. This is a very important rule in algebra. If you don't know something and you want to calculate it, give it the letter x, and then try and build an equation and then solve that equation. Okay? So the length we know is not, we don't know it's 1, we just know it's a certain length x, which we don't know. Now in this case, if I know that the breadth, it's not the length, the breadth is x, what will be breadth? It should be a b there. What should be the length? Well, I know that for every centimeter of breadth, the length will be square root 2. So if I multiply this by x, and let's write x like this, if I multiply that by x, I must also multiply that by x. So it's going to be x times square root 2. Let's write the x in a nice way. Fantastic. So the length now is going to be x square root 2. Now, what do I know about the length of a breadth? Well, I don't know more than that. But what I do know is the area is 1 over 16. Now, what is 1 over 16? It's the length times the breadth. It's x times x square root 2. See, that's what I was saying. What's the secret of algebra? How to use algebra? You look for something which you don't know what it is. You give it the letter x. Then you try and build an equation. Now we've got an equation. Now we can solve it. Okay, so it's 1 over 16. What is x times x? We've already looked at it here, and hopefully you remember from last year. It's going to be x squared square root 2. Okay? Now, we're going to how do you solve that? You looked at things like that. So we're going to get, hello, Nina. You're coming to help me, Nina. Come. Okay? You're going to divide by square root of 2. See, you want to get rid of the things in front of the x. So you're going to divide by square root of 2. I'm going to write it down here. X squared equal 1 over 16 square root of 2. Now, I don't want to know what x squared is. I want to know what x is. Okay? So I'm going to find x. So how do I go from x to x squared? I square root it. So I must square root the whole thing. Square root of 1 over 16 square root of 2. Now, there's a whole bunch of stuff that I can tell you, but at this point, I'm just going to tell you, put it in the calculator. That's the best way of doing it, okay? There are all kind of tricks that I can teach you, but I'm going to do it some other time, okay? So what I got, hopefully I'm not making a mistake, is square root 2 over 32. That's the answer. And you can leave it like that. If they're asking you for decimal places, then you just press the S and D button. I don't know if you've seen that before. And it gives me 0,044. Now, this is where it's tricky a bit with these kind of problems. So, normally in maths, once you find x, you got the answer. But now I need to figure out, hang on, what would they actually ask? What is this number? Well, that x is the bread. So the bread is square root 2 over 32. And the length, I still need to give out the length. The length is square root 2 times that. Okay? So I'm going to then write down square root 2 divided by 32 times square root 2. And for this, you don't need a calculator. I think hopefully all of you know that square root 2 times square root 2 is simply 2. So it's 2 over 32, which is equal to 1 over 16. And I think I've got a problem here. I'll just pause for a second. Okay, yes, obviously, I don't know if you noticed, but there's obviously a big problem here because what I've got is the length is 1 over 16, but the area must be 1 over 16, and that doesn't make sense. If the length is 1 over 16 and the width or the breadth is no 1, then that obviously is wrong. So I made a mistake there, and the mistake is, I realized what I did is I forgot to do the square root. Okay, that's the mistake. Okay, so I'm going to have to rechange this whole thing, and I'm going to write it again. The square root 16 square root 2, and then write it down as x minus 1. Okay, now I'm getting something I think a little bit better, which is 0,21. Okay, so this is going to be 0,21, and if I multiply it by square root 2, I will get the length here. So I'm going to multiply it by square root 2, and now I got 0,30. If I just use three decimal places, I get something else, which is definitely not 1 over 16. So that hopefully is the right one. Okay, a little bit of a long video, but hopefully not too long. Enjoy the exercise.